Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like up. 4.5 Vulcans aboard the USS Enterprise proves to be 4 too many on Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Directed by Jordan Canning and written by Dana Horgan and Henry Alonso Myers, Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 8, 4.5 Vulcans, is a hilarious, eyebrow-raising comedic romp and Strange New Worlds' third Vulcan-centric farce in as many seasons. When Nurse Christine Chapel's Jess Bush processed to turn herself, Captain Christopher Pike Anson Mount, Ensign Nyota Uhura Celia Rose Gooding, and Lieutenant Lon Noonien Singh Christina Chong into Vulcans can't be reversed, the four become different kinds of pointy-eared menaces aboard the USS Enterprise. From Vulcan Captain Pike's intense efficiency, to Uhura's manipulative relationship tactics, to Chapel choosing logic over any personal contact, the rest of Starship Enterprise's crew nearly goes out of their Vulcan minds dealing with this overload of logic. However, it's Lon who emerges as a scary threat when her Vulcan DNA unleashes something innate within her. 4.5 Vulcans may be an illogical misnomer, as there are actually 6.5 Vulcans in the episode. But here's how it all shakes on Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Christopher Pike as a Vulcan was more efficient, much louder, and his hair achieved even greater heights. But Chris, placing his starship on an insane schedule rotation, and his bluntness with his girlfriend, Captain Marie Bettel Melanie Scrofano, and her human scent, proved a pointy-eared Pike does not make for a better captain of the Enterprise. Vulcan logic heightened Nurse Christine Chapel's brainpower, allowing her to overcome her insecurities. Unfortunately, Chapel also decided her human relationships, all of them, were not logical. Christine broke up with Dr. Roger Corby Cillian O'Sullivan and decided to sever ties with the rest of the crew. Upon regaining her humanity, Chapel understood Spock better, and she and Corby are back together. Ensign Uhura was also emboldened as a Vulcan to pursue a relationship with Beto Ortega's minor Lucan, but on Nyota's terms. The young filmmaker's humanity had to go, and with the help of a mind meld, Uhura turned Beto into her lapdog, although he was still not as compliant as a real lapdog. Thanks to a Vulcan philosopher named Doug Patton Oswalt, who was able to reach their Catras, Pike, Uhura, and Chapel reverted to their normal selves and were filled with the very human emotions of regret, shame, and remorse over their behavior as Vulcans. They also learned that Vulcans can be jerks, a fact Lieutenant Spock Ethan Peck has coped with since childhood. While the solution to 4.5 Vulcans' dilemma was a two-pat deus ex machina and occurs off-screen, the joy was in the journey. For the audience, not for the 4 Vulcans or their crewmates aboard the Starship Enterprise. For Spock, it was also affirmation that his human side is a boon that balances the worst aspects of being Vulcan. Lon didn't behave like any of the other Vulcans because the infusion of Vulcan DNA unleashed something innate within her. The augmented genetics Lon inherited from her ancestor, Con Noonien Singh Ricardo Montalban. As a Vulcan, Lon became sinister, violent, and schemed to start an intergalactic war. Doug couldn't reach Lon's true self within her Catra, but Lieutenant Spock could and did. Lon's affection for Spock, and vice versa, turned their psychic slugfest into a romantic dance that allowed Lon to reclaim her humanity and choose to stop being Vulcan. Spock and Lon's brawl turned cavort was also one of the sexiest sequences ever in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Vulcan Lon finally showed why Lieutenant Noonien Singh feared the aspects of Khan within her. Amusingly, Star Trek: Strange New Worlds essentially found a novel way for Khan to appear in Season 3 in the form of Lon. Lon's strategic takeover of the USS Enterprise echoes Khan's future attempt in Star Trek, the original series. As security chief, Lon's plot may even have been more diabolical. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds introducing Patton Oswalt, as Doug also finally gave LT. Commander Una Chen Riley Rebecca Romean, a backstory Star Trek fans have waited 60 years for. 15 years prior, circa 2246, about a year after the launch of the Constitution-class USS Enterprise, Number 1 was in a relationship with Doug. Una becomes a different person and can't control herself due to her attraction to Doug, which the Vulcan reciprocates with mutual desire. Poor Lieutenant Spock was roped into a cover story that he was Una's husband and father of their 2 children, a lie that Doug quickly saw through but was fascinated by. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 8 ends with Una rejecting her original plan to work aboard the Enterprise instead of taking shore leave so that she can hook up with Doug. After 3 seasons of Strange New Worlds, it was great to learn more about and see this new side of Number 1. Captain Marie Bettel's Melanie Scrofano dinner with Pike and Vice Admiral Pasok Graham Somerville ended with her exploding in anger with the 2 Vulcans, but Pasok came away impressed with Marie, regardless. Pasok offered Bettel his job as Judge Advocate General of Starfleet's Judicial Department. Marie's career as a starship captain is over. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds set up Captain Bettel leaving the USS Enterprise and moving on to her new legal career. It's not clear if this is also a means for Melanie Scrofano to exit the series, or if she will continue to guest star as Bettel in Marie's new capacity. Meanwhile, Bettel's storyline as a human-Skorn hybrid, and all that entails, still needs to be resolved. LT Commander James T. Kirk Paul Wesley beamed aboard the Starship Enterprise on leave from the USS Farragut, and Scotty Martin Quinn joined him for a drink. Inviting Lon along turned out to be a mistake, as Scotty and Kirk were the first to discover the Vulcan Lon had fiendish plans for the Enterprise. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 3 shifted to a Lon and Spock romantic pairing, and 4.5 Vulcans seemingly resolved Kirk's romantic interest in Lon. James likely got the hint after Lon cold cocked him before Scotty's booby trap subdued the increasingly villainous Vulcan. Adventuring with Kirk in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 6 turned out to be a bad influence on Scotty. The Scottish engineer didn't like to drink, but after facing down the scary Vulcan Lon, Scotty realized he enjoys whiskey. In Star Trek, the original series, Scotty James Doohan will prize Scotch almost as much as he loves the USS Enterprise. Star Trek has always treated the Vulcans with an almost mythic reverence. Their logic-driven culture, unflinching discipline, and devotion to intellectual pursuits often set them apart from other species in the galaxy. They were the first to reach out to humanity in its earliest steps into space, the model of interstellar sophistication, and for years the moral and intellectual compass in the Federation's foundation. But in Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 8, the show dared to tilt the camera and fracture the illusion. The ending, in particular, is a powerful reminder that Vulcans, despite their pride, intellect, and superiority complex, are not nearly as flawless as they believe. The episode begins with a seemingly routine diplomatic mission. Captain Pike and the crew of the USS Enterprise escort a Vulcan delegation to mediate between 2 warring planetary systems. At first, everything unfolds predictably. The Vulcan ambassador dissects arguments with surgical precision, calculates probabilities with unnerving accuracy, and presents himself as a figure of irrefutable rationality. Even Spock, sitting quietly at his side, seems impressed by the ambassador's apparent control of the room. Pike trusts the Vulcans, as most Starfleet officers often do, to bring clarity to chaos. After all, Vulcans pride themselves on their ability to see through emotion, to resist the pitfalls that snare humans. What the Enterprise crew soon learns is that the Vulcan ambassador has been quietly manipulating both factions, not for peace, but for a strategic advantage Vulcan itself hopes to gain. The conflict, it turns out, is profitable for Vulcan science and technology, giving them access to raw materials in ways Starfleet regulations would never allow. For the humans on board, especially Pike, Uhura, and Lon, this revelation is earth-shattering. If Vulcans, the very model of enlightened Federation values, are willing to play politics and exploit chaos, what does that say about the foundations of their society? Spock's reaction is even more telling. Torn between his loyalty to Vulcan heritage and his Starfleet oath, he begins to recognize something he has always struggled to admit, that logic, when wielded without compassion, can become just another weapon. The superior species, so confident in their lack of emotional corruption, are exposed as vulnerable to a different kind of corruption, arrogance disguised as intellect. The episode's climax centers on Pike making a critical choice. The Vulcan ambassador insists that Starfleet should remain neutral, which in truth means turning a blind eye to the manipulation. But Pike's gut tells him something else, that neutrality in the face of exploitation is complicity. When the time comes to decide whether to follow the ambassador's directive or act on his instincts, Pike sides with his crew. He places trust not in the Vulcan calculation of probability, but in human empathy, intuition, and courage. And it works. By choosing to listen rather than lecture, to understand rather than dictate, Pike reaches the warring factions in a way the Vulcan could not. The peace that emerges is not the cold, strategic balance the ambassador sought, but a fragile, genuine truce born of shared vulnerability. The Enterprise warps away, leaving behind not only a commerce sector, but also a shaken understanding of Vulcan superiority. The ending scene cements the episode's message. Spock confronts the ambassador, challenging him for undermining both Starfleet's mission and Vulcan's supposed ideals. The ambassador, unshaken, delivers a chilling reply. Logic does not demand morality. It demands efficiency. You confuse human sentiment for truth. For Spock, and for the audience, this is a shattering blow. Vulcans have always postured as above the chaos of other species, as the arbiters of rationality. But in this moment, they are revealed to be something far less grand, a people as capable of self-deception, hypocrisy, and ethical failure as any other. Their so-called superiority is not a shield against corruption. It merely disguises it. This twist is not just about one ambassador's betrayal. It reverberates through everything we know about Vulcans in Trek lore. It recontextualizes the arrogance often seen in Vulcan interactions with humans, from T'Pol's skepticism in Enterprise to Sarek's condescension toward his human family. The Vulcans may believe they are helping, but sometimes they are simply cloaking prejudice in the language of logic. What Strange New Worlds Episode 8 captures so brilliantly is that no species, no matter how advanced, is immune to the pitfalls of pride. Vulcans are not inherently superior. They are not beyond corruption, not beyond moral failure, and certainly not beyond critique. In fact, their suppression of emotion, once seen as a strength, can also be a weakness. It blinds them to empathy, the very force that often drives real progress. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay with us.